The 2015 Walk to Old Green KU Law School. Martin Dickinson leading the group as we enter Wesco Beach.
Well, you lost me at a...
What is out of those publications?
It's not on the Westlaw. That's the traditional law school.
I'm also applying for some non-legal jobs. Yeah.
These are all two things.
It's interesting. It's not interesting.
Notable? Well, it's really boring, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Great. One fact. Around the statue. Hey, how are you?
I've been searching for the air.
Good to see you.
My name is Martin Dickinson. I've been around the law school longer years than anybody else, so that's why I'm asked to do this. I ask you to put this in a little granular context. This is the 137th year of the law school. So you're the 135th graduating class. 9,600 students have preceded you, and for half of the school's history, they were right here in this building here. So, good time to think about the past. Now that starts in 1870. At that time, Kansas had been a state for only 9 years. KU existed for only 5 years and consisted of one little building down there about a half-mile north. If you had stood here in 1870, you looked around, you wouldn't see a single tree. It was all tall grass prairie. Now Lawrence was a raw frontier town, of course, and in 1870, a young man from the east, James Woods Green, rode into town. He had had a privileged education, went to Williams College back east, admitted to the New York bar, had everything going for him there, but he decided to try his luck in the West. So he rode into town and found Lawrence, then as now, has way too many lawyers. So, what do you do about that? Well, he had a solution, and that is he married May Stevenson, who was the daughter of the judge. So he married, and his father there was Nelson Timothy Stevens, the only judge in Douglas County, regarded as the best legal mind in all the state. Not long after they got married, the governor and the Board of Regents wanted to create a law school. So they contacted the students and said, we want you to start the law school and be the first dean. Now he thought judging was a lot more fun than dean, so he said no. But he said, by the way, I know of this really bright young man who would make a nice dean for you. And so Jim Green was appointed dean of the law school to start it. First class, 1878. 13 students, $25 tuition for the year. And that $325 total, that all went to Green, and that was his compensation for the year. Most of the students had not completed high school yet. Green was a thoroughgoing populist, and he believed law school had two purposes. One was to train lawyers, but equally important was providing upward mobility for the young folks coming out of the small towns and farms in Kansas. So he strenuously opposed any kinds of admission standards, including graduating from high school. It wasn't until 1899 that graduation from high school was required, and no college was required until 1919 after his death. He was a very genuine populist, and the doors were open to everybody. Within 10 years after the school's founding, it had already graduated female and African American graduates. Now, to realize the significance of that, at that time, the allegedly elite schools in the East were limited strictly to white males. Most of those didn't open their doors for almost a half century. In 1890, KU played its first intercollegiate football game, and Green was hooked. So he became the best booster of all the faculty for the football. He would go to high school games, scout good talent, and then persuade them to come to KU. Look at the rosters for the games around the turn of the century. Most of the starting players were law students. By 1900, the school had 150 students. Fortunately, a number of them had gone to the legislature. So we were well placed there. Green was highly regarded. So he got them to appropriate money for this building. It was built for $70,000. The entire building, as you see here, with the exception of the stacks at the back. Dedicated in 1905. It was the home of the law school, 1905 till 1977, for 72 years. It's a wonderful old building inside, high ceilings, big windows, and so on. Had some defects. One of the defects was no air conditioning. So now that was fine for faculty because our desks and podium were away from the windows. But when the windows were open, the students were exposed to the spiders and the wasps and the bees all coming in. In fact, if you were really cruel as a faculty member, what you do is wait till you saw a wasp attack a student and then call on her to answer while the wasp was attacking. It got very crowded to the student auditorium. And we had to have Saturday classes because we didn't have enough classrooms to have all the classes. Now, I was reading at the time, and in one of these Saturday morning classes, which were very grounded from my viewpoint also, the students said, why in the world do we have Saturday classes? And I in jest said, it's to build character. You know, that became a legend in the law school, and to this day, if you ever talk to anybody who graduated in the 70s, they'll tell you it's all Dickinson's fault for Saturday classes. We almost lost the building in 1970. You may know that's the year that the Union was burned, the Comp Center was bombed, two young men were shot and killed on the streets of Lawrence. It was a heavy time. National Guard was on campus, and faculty were called in their sleeping bags to come in here and guard the building from being burned, and fortunately it survived. Okay, the statute, very important part of law school history. 1919, Green died. By then he was affectionately known as Uncle Jimmy Green, not just to law students but to other people in the university. He was so beloved that on the afternoon of his funeral, all university classes, not just law school classes, were adjourned, so people could go to the funeral. Immediately they wanted to raise money for a memorial. They started raising money and they raised $40,000. Now, inflation-wise, that's the equivalent of $500,000 today. So they then wanted to get the best possible sculptor to create a statue. He had done a bronze statue of the Bearded Man in Concord, Massachusetts. He had just done the Lincoln marble statue of the Lincoln Memorial on the Mall. So they contacted him and that tested this. He said, no, his thinking apparently was, hey, I've sculpted Abraham Lincoln. Why should I sculpt some Midwestern law school? So the students, the alumni, got on the train, drove all the way back to New York to his studio and talked with him, and he agreed to do it. And his quote after was that he had never seen such love for any man except in the case of Abraham Lincoln. So it was dedicated in 1924. It is, we understand it to be the only full-length statue of a faculty member and a student anywhere in the United States. And I personally think it's probably the most important art object in the state of Kansas, probably both artistically and historically. The student on the right there is thought to be Alfred Alford, graduated from law school in 1897. He died in the Spanish-American War and was the first University of Kansas graduate to die in a war. On the other side, if you look under the student, you'll see the law books in his hand, and under his jacket there is a letter sweater in tribute to Green's interest in athletics. You'll notice he's wearing the boots there. Those were known as engineer boots in those days, typically worn by the engineering school students. That was an unhappy thing to see this for the law students because law and engineering were great rivals in that day. Green's statement was that it would not have been aesthetically pleasing if you just have four legs there all encased by trousers. The legend on the other side says, our counselor and friend, James Woods Green, 40 years Dean of the School of Law, erected by those who loved him. An amazing thing. One more part of law school history, and that's the wheel. Now the wheel is about 200 yards down here. It was created in 1955, and for the last 22 years of law school existence was the watering hole for law students. Now, from personal experience, I know that it hasn't been changed in the slightest since 1955. So, if you go down there, there are lots of ghosts of law students. And fortunately, Zach Beasley and the SBA have invited us to a gathering there afterwards. So, let's do this. First, I suggest you go inside and have a look at Green Hall. Then join me down at the wheel, and we will celebrate 137 years of the law school, your graduation, and drink a toast to Uncle Jimmy Green. So, join me. You want to join us?
That's cool.
I have 3.
Okay. Okay.